It's officially that time of year. The NFL draft is this month, right around the corner. So it's time for Mock Draft Monday number 2.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow, along with your host, James Rapien. We've got a Mock Draft Monday coming to you. We're going to be on the NFL Mock Draft Database Simulator this week. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, and you can subscribe to the show on YouTube or follow anywhere you get your podcast so you know when we upload our content every day, and you can stay part of that first listen club. And James, you ready to do some drafting or what?
Yeah, I'm excited, and I think that still the majority of Bengals fans leaning offensive line, which has been certainly a theme in past drafts. So we'll see who's there at 28. Last week, it was Kalijah Kancey, and I think by far would be the best player available if he's on the board again today. We'll see if he makes it or who makes it. Obviously, it's a different mock simulator, so I'm excited to see who's there at 28.
And here we go. Let's just get started and let it fly and see who's available when the Bengals pick. And James, again, we're talking about some hopes at this point in the draft process and watching names fly off the board. What do you think?
Yeah, I saw Dalton Kincaid go, Michael Mayer go, and Michael Mayer's still available. So that one's interesting. I think, Anthony Richardson to Buffalo is such a weird one, but you never know. As far as trade offers,
be draft simulators,
Correct. He also won't be there at pick 27. He's going to go in the top 26 picks. I would be shocked if he didn't. That said, there are plenty of trades that we could entertain. I say we throw those out today and look at the players because we could get wild and do all of those things. Guess what? We're looking at one if you're watching on YouTube. The Chiefs are not trading up with the Bengals. I promise you. I would be shocked if that happens.
And offering their second and third round picks, like you take this in your sleep.
No doubt. You're moving back 3 back. Yeah, of course. But I can't do it.
We will not do it for the purposes of Mock Draft Monday.
But
look, you're drafting
let's talk about who is available, because this is what you call a best case scenario edition. And we go into these, just full disclosure, not knowing who's going to be there. If you watch on YouTube, you can see the simulator moving. But the fact that we are looking at a top, depending on who you talk to, but like top 5 prospect in Bijan Robinson at 28th overall. And guys like Kalijah Kancey are off the board. Deonte Banks off the board. Guys that you might look at and say Jackson Smith and Jigba, like best case scenario could be there. Well, Bijan Robinson is one of those guys. And of course, we're going to talk about the offensive line, and Anton Harrison is there. Michael Mayer is there. And I think in most simulators, if Harrison or Mayer are there, you're really considering them. You haven't even scrolled down yet to show some of the other guys that could be available. But to me, Darnell Washington, Jahmyr Gibbs, right? DeJuan Jones, Emmanuel Forbes. I know some people love him. A lot of interesting guys. To me, this is a no-brainer in Bijan Robinson. I'm sure it's not going to be as easy for you. So let's talk about it here, because I'm in on Bijan Robinson at 28 if he's available.
Yeah, this is a scenario where Osiris Torrance goes pick 13th. Cam Smith goes pick 16th. Deonte Banks goes 19th. The other one that really stood out to me was Keely Ringo, 16th. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys that have to be picked.
26th for Ringo.
Oh, 26. Sorry, yeah.
And Darnell Wright.
Which could certainly happen, but those are the guys that would have to be picked for the Bengals to have the choice of drafting Bijan Robinson, Michael Mayer, Anton Harrison, Darnell Washington, which edge case for me with those other guys available at pick 28. So to me, this is a thing where you have to decide how does Bijan Robinson fit with your team and make your team better. Mm-hmm. Your team driven by Joe Burrow, which we all agree on. The passing game assisted by the threat of a really good running back.
Yes.
Obviously. Versus just can you just draft Anton Harrison and put him in at right tackle and not worry about the offensive line for 5 years, 3 years, I guess, more reasonably perhaps. And maybe you do need to still worry about left guard. I don't know. Michael Mayer, when you have Lyman available and Bijan Robinson available, is a tougher sell, because the issue with Mayer versus a guy like Robinson is similar positional value. Like, a dominant tight end is more valuable than a dominant running back, but you're not finding dominant tight ends very often. Like, once every 5 years on average do you find a Travis Kelce or George Kittle, maybe once every 10 years, right? So you got a guy that's probably a better prospect at his position in Bijan Robinson, almost certainly, than Michael Mayer. And then it's just a positional value versus immediate impact versus how do you want to shape this offense decision. But I told you before we started recording, James, this is going to be the James Rapien mock draft. I'm letting you make the decisions today.
Who would you
You're
take?
the GM.
Tell me who you would take. You taking Anton Harrison over Bijan Robinson? It's draft night. It's Thursday night. Is that what you're doing?
Probably.
Wow. I can't. I mean, because this team, the reason they've been so good is because they haven't done that. Like, everyone talks about, protect Joe. Well, yeah, protect Joe with Jamar Chase. The reason they drafted Jamar Chase is because he was the best player available to them, and it paid off. And the Joe Mixon aside part of it, I go back to something Kurt Warner said to Dan Horde maybe a month ago. And Dan asked about the greatest show on turf on the Bengals Booth podcast. And Kurt was like, biggest difference between this offense, this current Bengals offense, and that one is we had Marshall Faulk. I'm not saying Bijan Robinson is Marshall Faulk, and I'm not trying to slight Joe Mixon. But if the Bengals view Bijan Robinson as a special player, to me, position value be damned, that could be a missing link. And that could be the difference between teams just playing you too high for the rest of time and you just saying, all right, fine, we're just going to use Bijan Robinson, this elite Jamar Chase-like running back, like from a threat standpoint. And so if you view him that way, if you don't, and you think that he's just a guy, one of many, well, then, yeah, I agree. Then don't take a running back. But to me, he's not just a guy. And if you talk to, like, at the combine, I talked to the people, NFL evaluators, not just Bengals people. He's a dog now. And so I think if Bijan Robinson's there at 28, I would sign me up, put it that way. And who knows, maybe there's another running back at 60 or 92 where I'm like, man, that stinks. You could have flipped it and gotten Harrison or gotten Michael Mayer. But to me, it's Bijan Robinson.
Given that these guys are available, would you take a trade back here to, like, late first, maybe not the Chiefs? I don't know. Maybe it's early second. Like, you feel pretty good about trading back here, I think. I would.
Well,
you would pick Bijan Robinson and walk away.
It's those three. Who else? Do you have DeJuan Jones in that bucket? Do you have Jahmyr Gibbs in that bucket? That's the question, because I think those are the five, and then it kind of gets. So how far are you moving down? If it's a couple spots, if Philly wants to move up for Bijan Robinson, I'd be open to the idea. But what are you getting, and what's the value of it? Right. And the other part of this with running back, it's easy to say first round running back. It's the 28th pick. It's not the 8th pick. I'm not trying to sell you on, going the Saquon Barkley route. This is 7 picks earlier than Nick Chubb was drafted. This is 10 picks earlier than Giovanni Bernard was drafted. Like, I get it's the first round. To me, late first round, you get that 5th-year option. And it's a guy that's a top 10 talent. So I would take Bijan Robinson, and I'd be pretty excited. It would be a fun post-round 1 draft episode of Locked On Bengals if Bijan Robinson's in stripes.
It would be fun. The only other thing I'm going to say about Bijan Robinson, you made a comparison to Jamar Chase and, like, the Penei Sewell, the Sewell versus Chase debates that were had. The big difference there is wide receiver is a premium position, obviously. It's just a very different position, even if you see them as similar prospects.
Sure. And Anton Harrison isn't Penei Sewell. Right. I mean, so that's the part of it. Yeah.
Depending on who you ask, to be honest, because some people that, I trust their offensive line opinions think that he's a worthy top 10-ish pick of a tackle. So if you think that he's a really good tackle, you're probably
That's still not Sewell, though.
right, but you're laughing at the idea of taking a running back over a top 10 pick valued top 10, top 15 offensive tackle.
Sure.
Probably. But
Because people can laugh when there's a 40 points per game and a ring on Joe Burrow's finger with Bijan Robinson as his rookie running back.
sure. We're going to pick Bijan Robinson here, and we're going to come back for the second round here in just a minute.
Today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. And if you want to make the decisions like we're making today, Bijan Robinson, well, you can do that with Ultimate Football GM. You get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory in an attempt to build a historic dynasty. So whether you want to hire the right coaches and coordinators, which is very, very hard to do, from managing free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel, and so much more, Ultimate Football GM is here for you in a realistic and challenging game world. It's completely free and playable offline, perfect for flights. So if you have a long flight coming up, get Ultimate Football GM in your life today. And Locked On Bengals listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all capitals. So use promo code Locked On in all caps and make sure you check out ultimate-gm.com today or look it up in the App Store. Again, ultimate-gm.com, Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Second round is here. Let's look at what's happened since the Bengals picked Bijan Robinson at 28 in this simulator. Anton Harrison went to the Kansas City Chiefs. We know who they were trying to trade up for.
Here we go. People are going to be like, James, you idiot. They were able to replace Orlando Brown. Oh, my God. Look at that A, by the way, for Bijan Robinson in this simulator. Big A right there. I like it.
Will Levis going pick 32 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's another one that wasn't picked before the Bengals drafted there. That's a comedy. I mean, second round.
I like it to Pittsburgh, by the way. No, I know. I agree. But I like that Pittsburgh had the guts to go with a tools guy like Will Levis. Anthony Richardson would be a good landing spot.
Teams do not lack guts in the simulator to draft quarterbacks, as we've seen with the Bills and the Steelers. The Rams picking Will McDonald at 36, BJ Ojulari at 37, DeJuan Jones 38, Adebawore at 39. So a lot of guys that you were talking about.
Michael Mayer
hoping getting to the second round.
41.
Obviously getting picked early in the second round. Michael Mayer at 41, Keon White 44, Darnell Washington at 45, Luke Musgrave 48, Isaiah Foskey 49, Clark Phillips 51. So if you're listening, Sam Laporta 56. And Zach Charbonnet 59. So if you're a Zach Charbonnet second round guy, you're vindicated with the selection of Bijan Robinson in the first round. But James, where are you going from here? What do you want to see?
Well, instantly, and we talked about this during the season, and our loyal listeners will hear when we're talking about Cordell Volson. Cody Mauch just sitting there looking at us with his toothless smile. That one's certainly interesting. Tucker Kraft, your guy from last week, and he's going to be your guy forever. Luke Whippler, I believe it's Whippler. Could be interesting there. Another interior alignment, someone to mention. DJ Turner. Anyone else standing out to you? Tyreek Stevenson is a suggestion. Matthew Bergeron, who some are interested in from an offensive line standpoint, is there as well. So some interesting offensive linemen, I would say, at this stage.
The most interesting offensive lineman to me is probably Joe Tittman here from Wisconsin. Has some interior line versatility, in my opinion, can play multiple positions in there. We talked to Mike Renner about him, I think, in addition to Whippler, back when we had him on a few weeks ago after the Combine. Derek Hall, a name that I think we're going to have to start familiarizing on this podcast, an edge rusher that could be a very viable second round target. DJ Turner from Michigan, the guy that tested like an absolute freak at the Combine, I think you could talk about as well. Julius Brents at corner, I think you could talk about. Gervon Dexter in the second round, I think could make some sense too. Those are the guys that are standing out to me as I'm looking through the list. Not an offensive tackle that I would really love to pick here. I know some people are very comfortable with Blake Freeland here. I'm not sure I am quite there at this point. So Any positions that you want to see, James, outside of tackle?
Sure. Let's see here. I was looking up a little bit more on Matthew Bergeron because I do think he's interesting. Let's see wide receiver. Let's just look. You know, I got to look. Nothing. See, nothing there for me in round 2. I think Marvin Mims is interesting, but I'm not in.
You're calling Tyler Scott nothing? Wow.
At 60, I love Tyler Scott. Interviewed him
Wow.
at UC's Pro Day. Not at 60. Can't do it. Sorry, my man. Nathaniel Dell can't do it. He is interesting, just not here. Let's see the punters. No, I'm just kidding. Michael Turk still there, TBD. Edge, we got a little edge action. Anything? You mentioned Derek Hall. Yeah, nothing. Man. All right, let's just go back to the all button. To me, so you're not in on. Let's talk about Cody Malk for a second. You're not in on him in round 2.
I think it would be fine in round 2. Totally fine. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously a transition there for him, most likely to a new position. You're asking most likely 2 North Dakota State guys to battle it out for left guard if you draft Cody Malk. So I'm fine with that. I'm going to upset some people here. Would not be mad if Cordell Volson has some competition in camp. I think that idea that Cordell Volson is going to get a whole lot better this year is hopeful, and I'm hopeful for it too, and I'm ready to give him the chance, but I'm also not shy about bringing in competition there and really pushing him. He came into the league as an older player out of college, relatively speaking, and he's limited athletically, right? So like what could get a little bit better for him is like mental processing. The game slows down. He'll get a little bit better with reps, but some of his issues are just going to be issues. And so I do wonder how much better he can get. And so bringing in competition there, I wouldn't be mad at it.
What about, so you're not in or open to Bergeron at all? I'm just discussing all of these offensive linemen. We might as well discuss it because he's the only real tackle that you could look at this point. All these other guys, like Malk is playing on the interior.
Unless you're a big believer in Blake Freeland.
Freeland. Sure.
I'm not diametrically opposed to Bergeron there. I think some people are. Who was I talking to? Somebody described him as Jackson Carman on the field at this point, but you know, maybe without some of the work ethic questions that Jackson Carman had coming into the league. So maybe you can work with that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. And there's some questions about him, about whether or not he's going to be a tackle in the NFL too. So it's not like it's clear cut. So to me, if you want your tackle, Blake Freeland's going to be gone at 92. There's no real, let's just talk about the position. There's no real cornerback that makes sense to me. Derek Hall could certainly be a guy that you would consider. If you want to go top interior guys, I think it's Tittman or Malk, whoever your preference is. DJ Turner is interesting here, though, man.
I think Turner and Brents are both pretty interesting here. I think that this would be a fine spot to pick either of them. I also think this is probably an okay spot to pick Tyler Stevenson, who the simulator is highlighting for us, for those of you not watching.
Yeah, I think to me, if I had to today, I'm leaning with Turner. I think that's where I would lean. It's close though, because there's a lot of guys in this bucket, an area where I'd be like, oh, that guy would be pretty good at 60, or that guy. To me, DJ Turner, you get him in here, you reunite him with Dax Hill. We saw his athleticism. They're going to have an inside look at, you know, what he is now. 5'11", 178. Are they in there? Do they want to get a 6'1" corner? Maybe. But I think that he's a guy that could end up being a really, really good starter. And he ran so well. I mean, 4.26, great vertical jump, broad jump. You mentioned his testing. It was up there. So I think that DJ Turner would be my pick here.
DJ Turner is just going to be about 22 and a half years old at the time of the draft. He's a little bit small, is probably the big question for him at 178 pounds at the combine. But like you said, he tested very, very well. DJ Turner, that's the call.
What do you think about it? That's who I'm taking. But what do you think about it?
I think it's reasonable here. I think that you could talk about some of the other corners as well. You could talk about Derek Hall. For some people, this might be Derek Hall going away. For some people, this might be Blake Freeland going away. Tight end, I'm okay with not doing Tucker Kraft in the second round again this week.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make an argument there. So
that's part of it too. We're going to be different. So let's do Turner and see what we can do in round 3.
We'll do Turner. We'll come back for round 3 and let the simulator run here to finish the show. Coming up next, and James, we're at a running back and a corner through 2 rounds. So let's see what happens in round 3.
Round 3, the picks are rolling. Cody Mauch went off the board. Bergeron off the board. Basically, the hope here is that one of these offensive linemen fall. That's my hope. And it looks like one did, baby. Oh, baby. This is how we do it, Jake Liscow. But let's go over who went off the board, because Blake Freeland went off the board shortly after. Hall went off the board shortly after. Stevenson, you mentioned him, went off the board right after. And none of those are really surprising that happened. Keandre Miller, for those wondering, went to the
early
Saints at pick
Keandre
71.
Miller pick. That's the earliest I've seen Keandre Miller go in any simulator I've done.
Yeah, I would say, he's a candidate for round 3. Cody Mauch went off the board. That's one that you never know. Like, you could see him falling. Bergeron to the Rams, another one that's interesting.
Gervon Dexter picked as well. Garrett Williams, who we talked about last week when we did Mock Draft Monday, in the 3rd round. That's going to be fascinating coming off the ACL for him to see where he ends up getting picked. Could be anywhere from the late 2nd to the 5th. Who knows? Darius Rush, another corner that I think we've talked about at some point, or maybe the Bengals have talked to. Nope, confusing him with somebody else. Off the board as well. So a bunch of corners get picked. Roshan Johnson, Tank Bigsby, some running backs getting picked early. We set the trend, James. We set the trend with running backs getting overdrafted. Not that we overdrafted Bijan Robinson, but we did draft Bijan Robinson. And a bunch of running backs have been picked earlier than I've seen them picked.
Yeah.
So you had a great feel for the simulator here, James. You knew that these running backs weren't going to be available when we wanted them.
And I love, like, Israel Abanikanda, right? I love the idea of adding him. But if Bijan Robinson's there at 28, then it's the Bijan show. That said, pick 92. So you address corner for the short term and long term. I think Turner could contribute, but he's not penciled in as a starter or anything like that. Bijan Robinson, plug and play. We know what's going to happen there. In round 3, I think it's interesting because I'm looking at some of these guys. Joe Tippmann still available. I was considering him in round 2. So I think he would be at or near the top of the board. Tucker Kraft, also interesting. We have not addressed tight end yet. So let's take a look at the tight ends and see if there hasn't been that run, because it doesn't look like really any were taken in round between our 2nd round pick and our round 3 pick, because Kraft is there, Schoonmaker's there, Kuntz is there. We'll have to look a little more. Is my guy Josh Wiley still there? Yeah, he is. He's way down there, which, keep sleeping on Josh Wiley. All right, so that's interesting. Let's look at the offensive tackle. Is there anyone there? Anyone at all? Tyler Steen, I'm good at this stage. And this is the downside, right? If you don't take one at 28 and you're not in on Blake Freeland at 60, you're probably not getting one, or getting a guy that you think can play that, which we'll see. I just can't pass up on, the Bijan Robinson aspect of it at 28. Interior offensive lineman, Luke Whippler's still there too. That's interesting, man. Joe Tippmann and Luke Whippler. I think Whippler, do you think he can be more than just a center, or is he a center only? That's the question.
Center. Yeah.
But that's the question for teams. And if he's a center only, I could certainly see him falling. We've seen really good centers fall. If you think he can have a little interior position flex, then maybe he goes earlier. I don't know about you. To me, this comes down to, unless I'm missing, let me look at these positions one more. But to me, this comes down to either Tucker Kraft or Joe Tippmann. And I think it's pretty close, because you've addressed corner. You're not taking a safety this high. Jordan Battle still on the board. I'm still not in on Tyler Scott at this range. If he was there at 131, I would certainly consider it. But to me, Kraft, Tippmann, and there are more tight ends available than there are offensive linemen, I would probably take Joe Tippmann. What do you think?
I like the Tippmann idea here. I mentioned that I'm open to bringing in competition at left guard, and there's 2 birds, 1 stone aspect of picking a Joe Tippmann if he falls. And this is way later than I think he's expected to be drafted, for what it's worth. Like, this is we'll talk about some other guys here, even if we end up picking Joe Tippmann, just because this is so late for him, in my opinion.
Sure.
But the idea here is that he can compete at left guard right away.
Mhm.
And it would be a different position for him, but I think he can go and compete at that position right away. And then you have a center of the future, and you have center depth. And, if something, God forbid, were to happen at another interior line position, you've
He can play all
bolstered your
three.
depth in such a way that you feel a little bit better about the guy coming in off the bench.
Well, if Kappa gets hurt again, right, and you need someone, well, now you have Tippmann or Volson, right? Like whoever would win. And maybe it isn't a competition. Maybe Volson just continues and they love him, and Tippmann's just backing up all three spots. All right, that's fine, because at some point, he would get the reins, and it's round 3. I agree with you. We were talking about him at a pick 60. Is this a little unreasonable or unrealistic? Maybe. Also, the draft is weird, and we've seen some crazier things than this happen for sure. So, to me, I would say Joe Tippmann, but let's talk about some of these other guys. Tucker Kraft here.
It's another one that's the same boat to me.
It's very
the same
tempting.
boat.
Yeah, that he's not
Joe
going to be here.
Julius Brents, Tucker Kraft, even Sidney Brown and Jordan Battle, safeties, are guys that I think are gone before the Bengals pick at 92? Yeah, like that's pretty late for all of them, who I think are all early third round, and some of them sneak into the second round kind of guys. So that's always an issue. When you do these simulators, when you're picking at 92 and you have like 62, 67, 69, 70, 72, 73 through like 80 available to you to pick, that's where you have the randomness factor and the different boards, different positional needs playing a role. But it's a good situation where you can just pick a faller. And as I look down the board here, you kind of have to. In this situation, there aren't a whole lot of guys further down the board that you feel great about, to me, as I was scrolling.
And someone has to fall, right? I mean, I think this is a pretty ideal, so if you're telling me they bolster the trenches, interior or tackle, and I get the preference would be tackle long term. They address the secondary and add a corner that can impact them long term, and they get the best running back in the draft. Feels pretty good. You're not going to be able to address everything in 3 rounds, but we didn't add pass rush. We wouldn't have addressed tight end if we go with Joe Tippmann, but I still think there are tight ends available. And this is the beauty of adding an Irv Smith. I get it. It's a 1-year flyer, but you don't feel as, oh my God, they have nothing at tight end. They at least have a little something. And so the Joe Tippmann pick makes a lot of sense to me. Let's just see who would be available in round 4 real quick.
Yeah, we have time to talk real quick about some options in the 4th round. It looks like the tight end run has sort of started, although Schoonmaker, oh no, he's picked as I'm talking about.
Jinxed it. You jinxed it.
Zach Kuntz, the best available tight end in the 4th round here, as there were a few picked. Tucker Kraft, of course, Luke Schoonmaker, and I thought I saw Payne Durham picked as well in there somewhere. Or no, it was Brenton Strange, the Penn State tight end. Okay. I'd be looking at Zach Kuntz in the 4th round if there wasn't a tight end selected at that point. High upside athletic kind of idea there.
I could see this could be the scenario where you see 2 day 3 tight ends for the Bengals, where they go Kuntz, and then if Wiley's still staring at them at pick 163 in round 5, they may go that route. Like I could totally see them going back to back in this type of scenario, depending on who's available. I agree with you though. Kuntz would be high on their board.
I'm looking at Kuntz pretty hard here for a 4th round pick. I know that at least one of our draft sheet contributors, Draft Guy Jared, you can find him on Twitter at Draft Guy Jared, really likes Dylan Horton. Has a day 2 grade on Dylan Horton out of TCU. Just shouting out one of his guys. He's we don't have an age on him yet, but really, really productive at TCU. And that was a pretty good program. Not an elite pass rush win rate or anything like that when you look at some of the advanced stats. So we'll see where he works out on the draft sheet. But yeah, I mean, Zach Kuntz here makes a lot of sense. Jonathan Mingo, if you're following our guy Bengals Sands on Twitter, Mike Santagata, he's talking about Jonathan Mingo this week. or in the last couple of days, James. There's another one.
Yeah.
But I'd probably reach a little bit and try to snag Zach Kuntz for some athleticism at that tight end position before you're down to hoping for Josh Wiley in the 5th round or something like that.
Well, imagine if you got Kuntz and Wiley. You'd feel pretty good about tight end, I would say. And I think that the double dip tight end scenario is still there. It might not be as likely, but in this scenario where you wait, is there a realm where round 4 and round 6 tight end is the top best player available, or round 4 and 5, or round 3 and 5 or 6? I think it is. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Kuntz here or Wiley, and whoever you prefer, because I could totally see an NFL team liking Wiley more than Kuntz. Now, maybe not every team, and people are going to look at the relative athletic score and just go, oh, it's got to be Kuntz. We'll see. You never know. And the medicals are obviously a factor as well.
Yeah, I think that on film, they might even be really close. Kuntz and Wiley. You might be breaking the tie with other factors such as productivity or age, although they're like the same age. Both of them are going to be 24 this year. So,
but they're pretty close. Obviously the testing part of it is made Zach Kuntz a household pre-draft name for sure.
4.55. I'm surprised you're not all over that, James.
Hey man, I'm just Bijan Robinson, DJ Turner, and Joe Tippmann.
Speed.
LFG. All right. That's what we're talking about here. You want to play too deep? You want to do that? All right. Well, we just added a hog molly from Wisconsin that's about to knock some dudes over, and Bijan Robinson's running behind him.
Feels like a fun addition to the team. DJ Turner, you got some corner of the future vibes there potentially if he can live up to his athleticism and develop in the NFL. Sure. We got straight A's from the simulator here, James.
The simulator says all A's, baby. It's like high school all over again for me. College, maybe not so much.
There you go. Well, we're going to probably have some people upset that we didn't draft an offensive lineman in the 1st round again. Although maybe Bijan Robinson will be more popular this week than Kalijah Cansey was last week. We'll see what the people say. Let us know in the YouTube comments. Let all of that hate flow, or love. We like love too. In the comments. So let us know what you think about this version of the Mock Draft Monday. We had a listener suggest, James, by the way, for anyone still listening this late in the show, that we take a look at some listener mock drafts on Mock Draft Monday at some point, and that might be part of a mailbag in the future here. So we will make sure that we're ready to solicit some feedback for some mock drafts of yours to take a look at here on a mailbag, probably Thursday, Friday at some point here. But make sure you stay tuned to the @LockedOnBengals Twitter page for that. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, Hoo Day, and have a good one.